G'day everyone, Carlos here again for another episode of What's Up in Archaeology. How are you guys? Hope you've had a nice week. I've had a normal week. I worked and stuff. And yeah, today's I'm going to try a different format with you guys. I would like you then to comment if this is a style which I can do. Hello everyone. Hello Warped. Hello Archaeology. Hello BJ mates. And what I was thinking of dividing my making another well, two What's Up in Archaeology type videos. Shouty Lay, Jimmy Stiffingers and Malefice. Just getting everyone saying hello to everyone. Anyway, I was thinking presenting a serious type interaction as to a serious dissection of an article on one day, and on another day, like for example today, do just the news, for example. Of course, I will chuck my opinion into it, or well, my informed opinion, but I was thinking just enjoying the articles as they are, or where I get the articles are well sourced. They usually provide sources in the description. If not, it's easy to Google. And something a bit lighter, just for example, to start off the week. So how do I start this one? Well, let's see. Dentistry. My first two articles deal with dentistry. You know how it is. We hate going to the dentist, touching our teeth and the drill bits and all that is horrendous. Now, imagine going to the dentist and he not using anesthetics, right, and not using a modern equipment. I hope you guys can hear me well, by the way. Yeah, I think you can. So let's start off sharing my the screen. And there we have here an article from Archaeology, the Archaeology magazine. It's quite recent. It's June the 12th, and it deals with dentistry. They're not so pearly whites. It deals with yep, everyone can see. Awesome. What does it say? It's about a 13,000-year-old drilling and basically root canal work. We'll start off. Researchers working near Lucca in northern Italy have found the oldest example of practice of filling dental cavities, according to Stefano Benazzi of the University of Bologna. Using microscopic techniques, Benazzi and his team. Wrong one. There we go. That's better. Increase the magnification. Yeah, that's a bit better. Two 13,000-year-old front teeth that belonged to a late Pleistocene hunter-gatherer were manipulated with a hand tool, right? What type of hand tool would they have had to drill holes that small? Basically, flint awls, flint instruments, stones that were chipped in such a way they presented a very fine, point, extremely fine cutting edge, because flint is probably the one of the flint and the volcanic glass produce the finest blade edges of you can find in nature, basically. I think I've talked about it before. Plastic surgeons actually use flint scalpel blades, which have the edge, the blade edge at 2 microns. You cannot get a similar metal cutting edge lower than 10 microns. or even more, or 20 microns. I'm not sure, but it's a factor of a huge factor of cutting edge. It's really, really sharp. For them to get around all the blood vessels and capillaries and all that in the face and whatever they do, the plastic surgery. But these guys were not using sophisticated implements. They were using sharpened, basically spear points. You could almost say it. You can spear points or arrow points. So after they were slightly damaged, they could be reworked, because that's the beauty of flint. It can be chipped and fastened to make other tools out of one that broke or whatever. Microlithic blades are one example, which is really small cutting edge, which were hafted onto for example, make harpoons, or even other instruments, or scythes to sickles to cut grasses for the seeds, etc. So the Iron Age dentists drilled to remove decaying material within the pulp chamber of the teeth and replaced it with a natural antiseptic paste containing bitumen, vegetable fibers, and hair. You might say hair and vegetable fibers aren't very antiseptic, but you'd be amazed how effective they could be. So they did have a they would have had very quite antiseptic qualities, judging from what happened to the person that he survived. So this new evidence suggests a more sophisticated technology than previous markings that Benazzi and his colleagues found in teeth from other sites in Italy, dating a few thousand years earlier. These teeth are believed to be the first known evidence of human dentistry. And when he says they're first human, he's definitely saying modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, because I will show you an even earlier example of dentistry that dates to 130,000 years ago. What the hell? What the hell just happened here? Sorry, people. What the fuck happened? There we go. Something. I apologize for these interruptions of technology. I'm a technophobe or whatever. No, I'm not. I just make mistakes. We have here from Croatia, from the Smithsonian Institute, another very respectable and respected publication. And an institute is not known for its quackery, etc. We can trust them. They are quite viable and authentic, or they're true. They are right. They are okay. I'll have a drink because I'm losing my cognitive methods. Yes, Wikipedia, bitumen is tar, and it does have antiseptic qualities to it. So would have the other plant material. Well, I know of what's it called, arnica. That is also pretty antiseptic, and wild onions are quite antiseptic as well, and they are available in Europe, by the way. So we have here Neanderthals may have used toothpicks to treat aching teeth. A Neanderthal living in what is now Croatia and wore grooves in his or her teeth, trying to soothe the pain. Here's a picture of the Neanderthal teeth. There's the grooves. You can see the grooves near this arrow, the black arrow, the white arrow, the top part. Yeah, about 130,000 years ago, the Neanderthal hello, base mama. Oh, you're here. Awesome. Good to have you on. Anyway, about 130,000 years ago, Neanderthal a Neanderthal near Krapina. Now, no one make any jokes about this name, Krapina. Come on, it's too obvious. It's just too much, you know. We shouldn't. It's a nice place. It is actually. It is a nice place. I've seen some pictures of the town of Krapina. Very nice. Was having a rough time, plagued with an impacted molar, she or he, because we still haven't found the actual the sex of this specimen. We may do once they do a genome on it on him. Well, it's back. And so with this Neanderthal person was plagued with an impacted molar. That person zealously scratched and poked the painful tooth, so much so that the pick left grooves in the surrounding teeth. As always, there's other links to the reporter that made one of the announcements, but you can see from these links, get other links, etc., etc. Always explore, by the way, people. Researchers have analyzed those marks, suggesting that it may have been a very primitive effort of dentistry. See, here's one primitive dentistry older than the Homo sapien one. But the other one was of a modern human, not of a human itself. That's where it failed a bit. Now, according to the press release, if you click on that blue link, with the links are in the description of all the articles I mentioned, you go to that actual press release, and it'll get you over to other links, etc., etc. But the teeth were discovered during excavation of Krapina site between 1899 and 1905. Over several decades, David Frey, an anthropologist at the University of Kansas, and his colleagues have been re-excavating the site and reanalyzing the artifacts found in the cave. They recently took a closer look at 4 teeth that came from a small mandible and found indications of constant tooth picking, fractures of the enamel, as well as grooves and scratches in the teeth, all likely made while the Neanderthal was still alive. They know that they would have been alive because you can't actually drill holes and make grooves once you're dead. So that's a little bit of an obvious thingamy-bob. So yeah, Frey, he wanted a deeper assessment of the teeth, so he presented the specimens to his long-time dentist, Joe Gatti. I need someone to give me a professional clinical interpretation of what this situation was. See, this is another example of how archaeologists ask professional help from other fields that is not of archaeology. This anthropologist asked his dentist, who knows teeth, and he got back that the Gatti recognized the signs of impacted molars, attributed the scratch marks to the sort of tooth-picking tool. They published their analysis in the Bulletin of the International Society of Paleodontology. That is the actual link to the study. So see, I don't need to present the actual studies, because most of the articles I present will have the link to the actual study in them. Some are under a paywall, so be alerted, people. I try not to. When I do my more serious analysis and dissection of an article, I usually try and find a free example of the study. If not, I will still link it, but I find that it's not as impactful as with the full article that people can actually read and try and understand, because they are sometimes, the actual articles are so riveting. They can be exciting, or well, I find them exciting anyway. But I'm a bookworm. Now, Frey was not certain whether the Neanderthal used a toothpick, but speculates it could have been a stiff piece of of grass or piece of bone. Yeah, the grass can be used. It is full of silica. It's made primarily of silicate. Yes, Maleficus, exactly, mate. But you know that you gotta quality. Sometimes you have to forgive it because it has to be paid for. And I know it's bullshit, but I still prefer to pay for really good peer-reviewed science publications instead of the free social justice infected crap that many of them are out there. So that's my opinion and only mine. But anyway, getting back to the article, stiff piece, like I said, grass contains silicate. It's very, very strong. It's tough as really tough. If you cut or using an instrument for example, a sickle long enough on grass, it'll actually blunt it. That's why you have to always sharpen it afterwards. Same goes with a scythe. So yeah, any blade that you use on grass, it'll go blunt. Trust me, it'll go blunt. Or a piece of bone. Yes, you can also use other wooden materials. You can even actually make thorns are very sharp. Or you can even a piece of obsidian, for example. A very small blade of it can be used as for the same effect. Anyway, while the ability to pick its teeth does not revolutionize the way we look at Neanderthals, obviously picking teeth and cleaning your teeth is primate. It's animal. A lot of animals do that, so it's not just mammals and that. Well, mammals mostly, but it's not inane to humans or Homo or primates. Going back into the classification, the taxonomy of our species. So yeah, so while the ability to pick its teeth didn't revolutionize, it does add the evidence that Neanderthals were more like us than previously thought. I've said this before. Of course, they are very much like us. We are not very, very dissimilar to Neanderthals. We are their cousin. We are like they are the subspecies of Homo sapiens. So yes, they're very, very similar to us. As in recent years, researchers have discovered that Neanderthals made cave art, which were thought to be only Homo sapiens sapiens. Jewelry out of eagle talons. You can click them and see how you look, where you want. They painted their bodies, created sophisticated tools, had larynxes capable of speech, and hunted cooperatively. Since I started my chat, yes, I have emphasized this aspect of Neanderthals. I am trying to, as small as I am, trying to get Neanderthals out of that they were brutish cave people shit. No, they were very sophisticated humans like we are. It fits into pattern that Neanderthals are being able to modify personal environment by using tools. Yes, in the press release, Freya said in the press release, because the toothpick grooves, whether they were made out of bone, grass stems, or whatever other, or who knows, who knows what, the scratches and the chips of the teeth, they show that that Neanderthals were doing something inside their mouths to treat dental irritations, or at least one was. Of course, they knew about certain aspects of medicine. There's also, I think I've mentioned in Spain, Atapuerca area, Spain, that Neanderthals were actually, they found in the plaque of their teeth that they claiming that they were vegetarians or so. But I said it's up for debate. But they did find herbal plants, mushrooms, specimens of DNA remains. That proved that they were they were using their environment to their own advantage. Of course, they survived for nearly 300,000 years in Europe. They knew their environment, so of course they treated themselves. They weren't. They were eventually off. Obviously, they died off, but we don't know why. But while they were surviving, they thrived. So they weren't brutish as many people think. Remains of the cave near Valencia in Spain also suggest that our evolutionary siblings used toothpicks to clear their teeth. Incredibly, toothpick marks have also been found in teeth of 1.6 and 1.9 million year old Homo habilis. Like I said, it's not just it goes back in time. The cleaning up your teeth, because if you eat, mostly that happens when you eat meat. Surprisingly, other animals that do something that at least groom their teeth and so on are mostly the carnivores, because grass itself is itself cleans, vegetable cleans out because it's got all the roughage and stuff. It cleans your teeth naturally, but meat, it leaves a plaque and leaves deposits. So yeah, so among the earliest human relatives, dental care likely didn't progress very far. Well, I see mentioned the one that they began drilling cavities, which 13,000 years later. Yeah, but this is 10 times more ancient, 130,000 to 13,000. So yes. And also mentions that the ancient Romans of Pompeii had extraordinarily nice teeth, and most of humanity, and many still do, from severe cavities and maladies of the teeth. Of course, if you eat a lot of meat or sugary stuff, you can get caries and shit. So yeah. Okay. Drink. Seeing how the chat's going. BJ Price, yes, it is. Gorse in Europe is also very, especially when it's in late season, when it's dried up, those teeth are bloody malicious. They'll go into they'll reach your bones. They can even puncture your bone. I've had that happen to me, so I know what happens. And you can use pine twigs. If you chew pine twigs, pine itself has the resin is naturally antiseptic, and it can also do something to your cleans up your teeth a little bit, and also freshens your breath. Surprisingly, I've never tried it because I can't stand the taste of pine. It's very bitter. Yeah, let's. This one can go. This can go. Now we're going on to a bit of not. This is background to archaeology. I've said before, we are not out of an ice age. We are still in an ice age, when many publications, even scientific ones, fall into that. The last ice age ended about 12,000 years ago. And no, that's not factually or completely true, due to the fact that we still have large areas of Earth that have ice. For example, the Arctic Circle is covered with ice. Well, it's getting thinner now thanks to climate change. Yes, climate change is real, and it's caused by us, but I'm unlike many other people. I'd say let it come, fuck it. So that's my point. Oh, bugger it. This explains how the chaos it caused when the last glacial maximum ended. That's the correct term, by the way. It has actually a nice animation. So you can see here that scientists have reconstructed the details of the collapse of the Eurasian ice sheet. The Eurasian ice sheet is the one that covered Europe up to what is now northern France. If I'm not mistaken, and there's this last last glacial maximum, a little area, a little bit north of Paris, there would have been a mile high wall of glacier ice. There was also one in America, in North America, that Manhattan was under also a mile or 1.6 kilometers of ice. So the Eurasian ice sheet was an enormous conveyor of ice that covered most of northern Europe some 23,000 years ago. That was when it was at its peak, 23,000 years ago. Its extent was such that one could have skied 4,500 kilometers continuously across it. So basically going from here to Siberia, eastern Siberia. And it from the far southwest Isles of Britain to Franz Joseph Land in the Siberian Arctic Arctic. Suffice to say, the extent had a massive and extremely hostile impact in Europe at the time. Of course, the ice sheet alone covered lowered the global sea level by 20 meters. So it is today. Take away 20 meters, and you see what it. Why did this go away? Still a bit weird. I'm still sharing, people. I don't know what's happening here. But anyway, the Eurasian ice sheet was a large conveyor of ice, yes, the 20 meters. So, and as it melted and collapsed, it caused severe flooding across the continent, led to dramatic sea level rise, diverted mega rivers into the continent. We have this extraordinary animation showing how as it grew, what the sea level, how it changed. Go back and forth. It's a bit confusing, but you can see the back and forth motion as the dark blue area shrinks. The green, which is the land, also shrinks. So yeah, it's in the description, so you guys can have a good read. Now, a cubic kilometer of ice is difficult to imagine, but think of a cube that is 1 kilometer long on each side. That is 1 cubic kilometer of ice. It will contain 1,000 million tons of water, a billion to our friends across the pond, and many other people. I don't use that as a billion. I use that as 1,000 million, but that's just me. I was brought up with. Now multiply that by 3,000. 3,000. That's my 3 billion. 3,000. 3 million. 3,000. 3 billion is what I would say, but you guys would say trillion, maybe. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's different. A trillion, my trillion, your billion, etc. Whatever. It's still okay. I'll just say it differently, but it's the same. Let's not get too. Anyway, now this event of the glaciation, what did it cause? Basically, this is the ice sheet. You can see the Seine where Paris is. This is all the catchment areas. The white is the actual glacial part of it, because it continued on to Asia, basically. Now, as it melted, we didn't have rivers. We had basically Amazons. All the European rivers during this melting would have been huge, vastly greater than they are now. And we see evidence of that from the debris, the debris that has been deposited in their respective respected. God, you guys can't see it. I don't know what's happening. I apologize. The respective deltas. That's it. Sometimes words take a bit, right? I don't know why it's not. I'm gonna do this again, because Okay, it should be sharing now. Again, weird shit. Sorry about that. Oh, good. Thank you, Archaeology. Anyway, again, these stupid people, they can't, God damn it, leave politics out of it. Even though this Center for Arctic Gas Hydrated Environmental Climate, that's very, yeah, I won't comment on this article's, but it's science. I look for science. I don't look for politics. But they didn't have to talk about politics here. The original Brexit. Give a shit, Jesus. Yes, once the sea level rose, it flooded a huge area. God, I wish I knew. I wish I could remember the name. Maybe it's in here. I'm reading this as it is. There was an island, not an island, a landmass between the Great Britain and France, basically. That it got flooded as the ice melted, as the sea level rose. I can't remember the name, but it happened about 10,000 years ago when it happened. This Alun Habat, as the ice retreats, humans advance, which is obvious, as the ice wall came retreated to the north. The land recovered quickly. In fact, forests were up and running not 1,000 years after that advancement. So every couple of 100 years, massive forests would have been growing. It would have been replacing the land that was covered with ice. It's very, very fast, the reforestation after events like these, and we have facts. So we have data on that actually, and then basically a lot of things happened, not just what they mentioned in the article. It's still happening now in the Scandinavia. Scandinavia was one of the last areas that were covered by the ice, right? So it's bouncing back up. It's, if you can imagine a balloon, where you a beach ball, where you put your hand on it, flatten it down. That would have been the ice on the Scandinavian peninsula. Now you remove your hand, it'll slowly retake its original shape. It's happening now. They've measured it. The land is rising in Scandinavia, Norway, and Norway, Denmark, not as much, but Norway and Sweden, about 1 or 2 centimeters per year. So it's fast. It's really fast. So yeah, the land is reclaiming what once was. Yeah, that's that article out of the way. I love this picture. Really good. You can see that the alpine ice cap, that's the Alps. They also provide a lot of rainwater, but to both sides of the alpine area, into Italy, at Switzerland, etc. But this really illustrates the massive amount of rivers, the Vistula, Elbe, Rhine, the Thames, the Seine. They all were mostly interconnected into a massive river that came out more or less here. It's called the Fleuve Manche. Which is where the Seine, I think, empties out, or close to it. So yeah, the catchment of the Fleuve Manche was the size of the Mississippi. For the Americans, have a perspective on how I know how big the Mississippi catchment area is. I know it. I've studied it. I've seen it. It's huge. Not as big as, of course, not as big as the Amazon, but not very far off either. The Mississippi is one of the largest catchment area, river catchment areas of water in the world. It's up in the top 5. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I'm going to get another beer. I'll be right back. Just stop sharing this. Yes, I've stopped sharing, so I'll be back in 1 second. So I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I'm parched, and then we'll come back to another article on Neanderthals, and we'll wrap it up for tonight. So 1 second, people. I apologize for this. See, that didn't take me much. Okay, another example of I love. You guys know that I love Neanderthals. I probably don't display it enough, so so here's another one. I will never apologize if I bore you to tears on Neanderthals, but because I find them such extremely fascinating, intriguing human beings. They were the first Europeans. They were the first of a lot of things. The first of megafaunal hunters, because the megafauna, elephants, rhinoceroses, rhinos, and etc. They lived in Africa, obviously. But compared to the northern hemisphere cousins of those animals, the woolly rhino was bigger than the white rhino. You have African origin. The lions in the European subcontinent, Eurasian continent, the cave lion was twice as big as the biggest lion we have now. The woolly mammoth was not the biggest of the pachyderms. It was bigger than the African elephant, but it was not as big as the earlier pachyderms, or the mastodons of the American continent, North American continent. The mastodons were slightly bigger, more massive than the woolly or than the mammoths. So, but they had huge tusks, much greater, bigger, more massive than both the mastodons and modern day, or any modern elephant we have alive now. And one of the reasons they were used. This is just getting a bit of background to this story, which we'll read this article, which we'll read, because just setting something of the what the period of Neanderthal Neanderthal expression in Europe was. The mammoths would use their tusks to clear snow, to get into the grasses that were below it, and to break snow to get water, break ice, in fact, to get water. So that's just something, a little bit of extra knowledge that's good for you guys. So let's get on into the article itself. Again, share the screen. I hope it doesn't. Before it wasn't really showing up as it should be. Sometimes it happens, and I apologize for that. Now, this is basically something from NPR. A little smaller article on food for thought. When it came to food, Neanderthals weren't exactly picky eaters. I've mentioned this before, that our species, our subspecies, Homo sapiens sapiens, would, when they killed their prey, an animal, a large animal, they would just take the primest cuts. Neanderthals, no, there is evidence as this is not just one. I've read many other articles that they basically ate the whole animal like we do now. So they would get the more and the less nutritious parts of the animal, while the Homo sapiens sapiens would basically just get the prime cuts, the ones that would give them more energy for the effort and for the pound. The article says, it's a whimsical article, I have to admit. It's a nice way to end this show. Something whimsical, because shit, archaeologists are not all bloody serious people and so on, and have no fun. I think I have a really great sense of humor. My Twitter dicks it, but it's can be cruel, as all my blocks, people that block me can attest to. Anyway, that better. Let's increase this, make this better to read, so everyone can have a small gander. But you can always, as I said, the links are in the description, so everybody have a gander. That feeling when your body's really craving a nice salad. A nice steak would make me crave more, but that's just me. But the only thing you have in the fridge is a day-old pepperoni pizza. And what's wrong with a day-old pepperoni pizza? Bloody delicious. And you don't want to go through all the trouble of heading to the grocery store and gather all the ingredients for the salad, so you settle for the pizza. And what's wrong with that? Well, Neanderthals feel you, kind of. Yeah. Researchers are finding that Neanderthals and early humans weren't all that different. Hallelujah. See, even a whimsical article confirms my belief, my position. Me. Yes. Well, I'm not me. Science confirms it. I'm nothing. Remove me from the equation and it still confirms the position of science. So that's how it is. And they even got together and made babies every now and then. Yep. Nicely phrased. What's this guy's name? Manvi Singh. I could make a joke there, but God, I don't want to. I just recently monetized my channel. I don't want to lose the money. Even though I don't care about the money, but just, no, I don't want to get a community strike or anything like that. But I could make a joke about him. And it's not a racist joke, so nobody get into that sort of thing. Anyway, you may have had different approaches. Yes, we are both omnivores. They said we were both omnivores, and during the Ice Age, the last glacial maximum, when the climate was constantly fluctuating, Neanderthals tended to chow down on whatever was most reliably available. Yes, and according to a study, it's on the Journal of you guys click on the article if you want to read it. I've read it, but I'm not this way I'm doing things today is more just news instead of the serious side of things. But there are links. I provide links, even though I don't provide them in the description or anything. I provide links on the actual articles. Now, that was published in the Proceedings LOS 1. During the cold spells, Neanderthals, especially those who lived in open grassland environments, subsisted mostly on meat. There's a parallel of that. They're called the Inuits. So people can get the perspective of what they are trying to describe here. They lived, instead of the open grassland environments, no trees, very few edible plant material. There was a lot. In fact, there was quite a lot, but not as much as, say, more temperate regions where variation. So doing these lusher climbs, the Neanderthals would supplement their diet with plant seeds and nuts. Yes, we know that. Nuts would have to be found in where trees were up. Plants, a lot of edible plants in, for example, just so the American people know, the prairies. There's a smorgasbord of edible plants there if you know how to look for them. Those survivalists, not those wacky survivalists that built bloody bunkers and so on. The ones that actually go into the field and live off the land type of survivalists that I'm talking about. Bear Grill type people. That guy that drinks his own piss and that, you know who I'm talking about. I hope you do, because damn. And the seeds, yep, seeds, a lot of grasses in that area, naturally grasses. like every other ones would do. But the early humans, on the other hand, seem to stick to pretty consistent diet regardless of environmental change. They regularly ate a relatively high proportion of plant-based foods because they lived in areas which were available. Microscopic dings and dents of ancient teeth. Yeah, and other ways of, you can also have other ways of doing that. This is actually a nice picture. Early humans preparing food. Let's see, what do we have here? A bowl. Well, disregard the bowl, by the way. But and the bowls, you have a grindstone to grind your grasses. You have a rock on top of a fire to basically barbecue some meat. After you cooked the bread or the flat breads, you could add, I would say that would be honey, naturally occurring. That could have crushed some berries, plants, seeds, make a mush, add them to those flatbreads and make something like a souvlaki or something like that. So yeah, that's interesting. These would have been not clay, but most likely weaved baskets to gather the grains and so on. Other than that, other than some of the few inconsistencies, this would be a temporarily summer base camp, by the way. Do you know why? Because it's, even though you can see the mountains behind it, they have a temporary tent, and you only have a temporary tent when you're traveling the land during summer, which was short. Spring was late spring to up to early autumn. That's the period, about 5 months, 4.5 months maximum during the heights of the glacial period. So yeah, nice picture there by Jay Ferret. You guys want to know who did it, but anyway. So the moment we get our adult teeth, we start to wear down. Yeah, at the rate in which they wear down, they're very, very much related to what we eat. Yes, especially if we look at the molars. And Cyril Zattari, a paleoanthropologist at the University of Tübingen in Germany. I probably massacred Tübingen less than Zaatari, but anyway, who led the study. The food that you're chewing leaves tiny, tiny marks in the teeth. Obviously, meat, especially cooked meat, is relatively gentle on choppers, whereas seeds, nuts leave their marks. She said. Zaatari and her colleagues looked at the teeth of Neanderthals and humans living mainly in Europe throughout the Upper Paleolithic period. A link to what the Upper Paleolithic period means. It's 12,000 to 350,000 years BC, basically. So up from 350 to, no, yeah, it was basically Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens. Homo sapiens Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens. That is what the Upper Paleolithic period is, more or less. The Lower Paleolithic would have been Heidelbergensis. Now, the mid Paleolithic would have been, in Europe at least, Heidelbergensis, and the lower Paleolithic in Europe would have been Homo erectus, and the same for the African fossils, except that would go further back, including the Homo genus, the Australopithecines, and the Paranthropus, and so on. Just a little bit of. Anyway, the researchers weren't able to directly compare Neanderthals and the humans who lived in the exact same area time. Still, that they can assume, yes, you can assume to a certain extent, yeah. It's fine. No, nothing to think. Both groups had access to the same resources. Well, technically, maybe not, because at different time periods during the Upper Paleolithic period, there would have been slightly different climatic conditions. We've found from ice cores that even during the glacial maximum, when it was at its coldest, there were half decades, 4, 5, 10 years of of hot temperature that changed the climate. And when you got 10, 15 years of really, really relatively warmer temperature, I'm talking about comparable to what we have today in Europe, especially in Northern Europe, even in where I live in the Iberian Peninsula, temperatures that could reach up to in the high 20s, low 30s in the northern parts of Europe, Germany. Well, Germany not as much, but just below the glacial wall, really warm grass trees could grow faster than that. So yeah, it's when they say that, they really should be careful. So Al-Zaatari says that they noticed that Neanderthals and humans ate different ratios of meat and plant-based foods. That could be one reason why what I just mentioned now, that the ones that they studied may have been alive during those. Each sample would have still had been different climatic backgrounds to them, and so on. Diseases could wipe out animals, and the humans that were Homo sapiens sapiens that were there had to rely more on plant materials. For example, this is an example that I'm giving. It's valid example. It's a valid example. So what could explain these differences in eating habits? Well, scientists aren't really sure. Of course, we don't. Maybe it's simply a cultural difference. Absolutely. Al-Zaatari says, or maybe humans were better at exploiting their environment to acquire food that was harder to get. Absolutely, yes. Now, I totally agree with these two statements. That's perfectly valid. I just made another possibility, and it fits between these. Unfortunately, we can't know for sure. We can't, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. What we don't know, we don't make up. It's fine that we don't know. We'll get there. We may find the answers, but until we find the answers, we don't know. So this research does not fit in with other evidence indicating that Neanderthals tended to eat more meat than early humans. Susan Cashel, an anthropologist at Rutgers University, who wasn't involved in the study but examines dental wear isn't the only way of deciphering our ancestors' eating habits. I love it. I love articles that present two sides of the story. They're basically debunking, well, not debunking, but just presenting different, saying, no, but yeah, this is science working, guys. This is science working. This is beautiful. You should appreciate this. A better way of looking at that diet is to look at the chemistry of tooth enamels. Yes, and we've done that. This study is not invalid, by the way, even though Susan Cashel presents a conflicting argument. But she's not really. It's not a conflicting argument that it's making the other one irrelevant. It's just presenting other facets and using other types of analysis. One was using the tooth wear. Zaatari was using the tooth wearing down of the teeth, while Susan Cashel is using chemical analysis. Both have to be done. Once you get both done, then you combine them, you get a better picture. So the different plants absorb different amounts of carbon. Isotype scientists can analyze the ratio of various isotopes in ancient animal to figure out the sorts of fruits, nuts, vegetation our ancient ancestors ate. So the isotopes in tooth enamel can paint a broader picture of what someone ate through their life. On the other hand, the advantage is looking at dental wear is where you can get a fuller picture of what they were eating right up to the time when they died. Says Sarah Bailey, an anthropologist at New York University. Bailey, who wasn't involved in the recent study, another one, says that the new research adds to our growing understanding of human life. Now, this one, Sarah Bailey, is the blinder. Do you guys see it? And humans, perhaps humans outlived and to some extent genetically swamped up the Neanderthals because they were better at making their environment work for them, Bailey says. At this point, we can only speculate. And this is one more bit of information we can use. This is a whimsical, as I said, a whimsical article, but it presents it in possibly, this is an example of an objective article, how you write objective articles. 3 points of view were displayed, and they used the third one to bind the other 2 together. It's not just chemical analysis of the teeth, the isotopes. It's not just the tooth wear analysis. You have to combine the 2 together. Plus, Bailey brings up another one, which was that we outbred them. We bred them out of existence, and this is a nice one. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one because I really like this article. I'm going to favorite this one. So stop sharing. As I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this format. I'm started working on one, which is an article, which I'm going to do a hangout, possibly even Wednesday or Thursday. As soon as I get all the facts and the citations, the sources, all perfectly cataloged, perfectly done, because I'm going to tackle something that is it's controversial, and it has to be done really, really scientifically valid. Because so I won't say what it is for now, but I might do a special edition this week. Hopefully not where a lot of huge YouTubers do the hangouts together, so I'll get at least some people watching. And yeah. So how's the chat? Yeah, well, anyway, close to closing time. I want to thank everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this way of presenting the articles. Trying to better myself all the time. As you can see, I still stutter a little bit when I talk, but not as much as I think I've improved. And yeah, on this note, I will be saying goodbye. Thank you for coming on, and good night to all.